Israel's pounding of Gaza has continued into a sixth day, despite international calls for a ceasefire. The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon is heading to Cairo to join talks about a possible truce. 86 Palestinians and 3 Israelis have died in 6 days as Israel hits Gaza from the sea and air while Hamas militants fire rockets. Sunday was the bloodiest day so far in Israel's Operation Pillar of Defence. Israel's army says it had targeted around 80 sites overnight, including militant-owned buildings, weapons storage facilities and police stations, bringing its total to 1,350 sites targeted since Wednesday. Palestinian sources have said 18 people were killed in those raids alone. Paul Hershen is a spokesperson for the Israeli Foreign Ministry. He joins us now from Tel Aviv. Ismail Patel is chairman of Friends of Al-Aqsa, a pro-Palestinian pressure group based in the UK. Good morning to you both. Welcome to the programme.
Good morning.
Paul, first of all, enormous international concern about what is happening in this situation. Are we any closer to a ceasefire?
I don't know if we're any closer to a ceasefire. The ball really is in Hamas's court. They've been raining down missiles on us, not for days and weeks, but for months and years. If they're willing to stop for a very long time, then things can change.
Ishmael, a ceasefire requires a ceasefire from both directions. Is that possible?
A ceasefire is possible this very moment if Israel stops killing the Palestinians. Your statistics right at the introduction shows that the Israelis have been killing the Palestinians at an enormous and an alarming rate. And I think we have to be very honest that Israel needs to rein in its military power, its air force and its artillery.
Paul, short of a ceasefire, there are other conversations about the likelihood of a ground invasion by the Israeli Defence Forces. Is that likely?
It's a distinct possibility. Hopefully it won't happen, but it's a distinct possibility. Again, it's really a function of how Hamas responds in the coming hours and day, perhaps more.
So your position is if the rocket attacks from Gaza stop, the military action from Israel stops?
Together with a guarantee that they will not just stop for 5 minutes, but that they will stop for a very, very long time.
Ishmael, does that seem reasonable?
Well, that is not in the context of the situation. We have to understand that Palestinians have been killed routinely, despite what has happened in the last 3 days. The intensity obviously has increased. But since Operation Cast Lead in 2008, over 271 Palestinians have been killed by Israel. There has been a siege around Gaza for the past 12 years. People in Gaza are not allowed to travel out. Goods are not allowed to come in. And while Israel is trying to play the innocent party here, they are the ones who are perpetrating the crimes. While we should, all of us in the international community and as individual citizens, look forward very, very quickly to end this crisis and end the bloodshed on both sides, but we have to be honest that it's Israel who has the ability to stop this rather than Hamas.
Do you believe, Ishmael, that the Palestinian people inside Gaza agree with the military tactics of Hamas?
There is no military tactics as such. What is happening is the people in Gaza are defending themselves. There is no military tactics against bombs being dropped from the skies, coming across from the sea, and artillery being pounded upon you. The only thing people in Gaza are doing are defending their right to survive.
Paul, when we look at those news and listen to the radio accounts of what's happening right now in Gaza, it does look to many people like an enormous military power is stomping all over a tiny little land strip called Gaza, Little Gaza. That's how it's playing to a lot of people.
Look, there's no question Israel is without a doubt the stronger player in the region, not only vis-a-vis Hamas, but throughout the region. That we know and that we understand. Israel is also a country which is doing everything it possibly can to avoid civilian casualties, coming up against Hamas, which is essentially a synonym for a double war crime. People who have deliberately for years now been targeting our civilians, while we see right now they're hiding behind their own civilians, using them as human shields. Look, I understand this is a difficult situation. This is a complex situation, and one which I think we could perhaps all agree it's in our mutual benefit and interest to resolve. We have been saying for some years now to the Palestinian Authority to come back to the negotiating table, to put all of the issues on the table. We will resolve this conflict. Too many people on both sides, innocent civilians, have been killed not only in the last few days, but over many years. But I think that it's clear that no country anywhere in the world could accept a situation whereby incessantly, over months, over years, rockets are being fired deliberately into civilian neighborhoods in southern Israel.
Ismail?
Well, it's very simple. The reason this is happening is because Israel has a siege around people of Gaza. It has occupied the West Bank, and Gaza itself is under occupation of Israeli military force. And once the occupation ends, once the siege ends, people in Gaza and in Palestine, over the Palestinians, will become a free people. And Israel has to end its occupation. That is centered to the whole context. This is not a very complicated issue at all.
With all due respect, Israel
do not occupy my
out
time.
of Gaza 7 years ago.
Allow me to carry on. Thank you. Israel is the occupying power. It has to end its occupation. And once the occupation ends, I am sure there will be no conflict in the region at all. But Israel has to accept its moral responsibility of the subjugation and the occupation of the Palestinian people.
So, Paul, this is not really about rockets. That's what he's saying. This is about the cause of the situation that produces these rockets.
We have to remember why Israel was, until 7 years ago, in the Gaza Strip in the first place. And this is because, together with many other members of the Arab world, they aggressed us in 1967, not the other way around. The truth is, I'm very happy to have the conversation, but I think that it's incumbent upon us to remain within the bounds of intellectual honesty. Israel redeployed out of the Gaza Strip 7 years ago. We exhumed the bodies of Israelis who had died and been buried there in order to leave the Gaza Strip without any sign, any taint of Israel being present. It's nice and it's easy and it's a little bit cheap demagoguery to say there's a siege on Gaza. With all due respect, Gaza shares a border with Egypt. Whether we like it or not, it's not relevant whether Israel likes it or not. They are free to bring whatever they want over the border with Egypt. We have zero control over that. In terms of the border crossing between Israel and Gaza, there is today, yesterday, every day for the last week as well as for the last month and years, there is whatever they want going across the border, from food through construction material, through medications. Yesterday, we transferred into Gaza 124 trucks of humanitarian aid from Israel. It's duplicitous to say that there's a siege on Gaza when we don't even control all of the borders around Gaza. So I'm not pretending that it's a nice situation. I'm not pretending that it's an easy situation. This is a very complex, difficult situation. But if we're going to have the conversation, it's really incumbent on us to remain within the realms of intellectual honesty.
You're listening to Paul Hershen. He's a spokesperson for the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Also joining us, Ismail Patel, chairman of the Friends of Al-Aqsa, a pro-Palestinian pressure group which is based in the UK. Let's take a couple of calls as well. Our guest will stay with us. 08459 555 678. John Hershen is in Dungannon today. John, good morning.
Good morning, William.
And I know you've been to Gaza, haven't you, with humanitarian aid work?
Been several times, yes. To start with, this is not a war in Gaza. This is a massacre, another massacre. This is the fifth or else the sixth time before an election that Israel has launched murderous attacks on Gaza. Yesterday, they killed more people in Gaza than have been killed in 12 years of rocket fire into Israel. Now, just put that number in your head. Yesterday, they killed more people than 12 years of rocket fire. Now, just put that in your head. Why are they not challenged on their occupation? Their illegal occupation of Palestinian land. It's illegal under international law. There's 65 UN resolutions against Israel, more than any other country in the world put together, for their behaviour towards the Palestinians. 64 years now, they have kept them under the jackboot of their boots. In Gaza, I'm a truck driver. I've taken more goods to England in the last week that has been allowed to be exported out of Gaza, and they come on the news and they start to how brave they are sending all this stuff into Gaza. People in Gaza they've no infrastructure because it's all been bombed and destroyed. They can't farm without getting shot. The fishermen go out and they're challenged with these naval warships, and their boats are sunk and they're shot. They can't fish. They can't farm. They can't produce anything. They have to dig holes in the ground a kilometre deep into Egypt in order to get food. I've been in them. I've been in the lifeline tunnels. And then they come down and they bomb them every chance they get. He talks about the Egypt border being open. The Egyptian Rafah crossing is subject to the Oslo Accords, and no goods are allowed to come in or out through that crossing. That's only a passenger terminal only.
John, take a pause for a wee second. You made a lot of points there, important points. I want to give Paul Hershin from the Israeli Foreign Ministry a chance to respond to some of that. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, beyond the factual errors, I didn't really hear that he was asking a question. The truth is that the Oslo Accords do not limit any transfer of any goods across the border between Gaza and Egypt. That's simply not true. There is, just if I can quote the UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency report from yesterday. They say there hasn't been any need to provide emergency humanitarian assistance or to open UNRWA facilities as emergency shelters. If we look at the reality, and the last thing I want to do is belittle the death of civilians on either side of this conflict, or for that matter, any conflict. But in 1,350 strikes by our military, in the last 6 days, some 30 civilians have been killed. Now, again, I don't want to belittle the death of any civilian, but I think that either the Israeli military is totally incompetent, or we can agree that in 1,350 strikes, the death of 30 civilians, sad and tragic as it is, and it is a clear evidence that we are taking every possible step to avoid civilian casualties.
So what are you saying? Those are acceptable? Are you saying those are acceptable fatalities? 30 deaths.
I said, and I think I said clearly, that every civilian casualty is a tragedy and absolutely not acceptable to anybody in any conflict. Unfortunately, this is a situation where Hamas is committing a double war crime. Hamas is targeting deliberately our civilians, and publicly and with a certain element of pride, hiding behind their civilians. We're going after their military infrastructure. We're going after their military supplies. We're going after the command and control. And we're saying clearly, we've made tens of thousands of phone calls into Gaza, tens of thousands of text messages. We've dropped leaflets, and we've actually even, for a short occasion, taken over the frequencies of their radios and broadcast into the public. Stay away from the Hamas military institutions. Stay away from the Hamas leadership. Stay away from the Hamas operatives. We know who they are. We're going after them. We know where they are.
Gary Spedding is president of the Palestine Society at Queen's University. Gary, good morning.
Good morning, William. I'm in a bit of a strange position because I disagree with the Israeli government spokesperson, obviously, but I also disagree with the previous person as well, because, frankly, I think that advocating for the Palestinian human rights needs a moderate approach rather than a radical one. And if I'm honest, the horrifying situation at the moment is the fact that the civilians are being killed. The first sort of thing that we need to look at is trying to get a ceasefire as soon as possible. I disagree with the position that the British government has taken on this in making the blame entirely on Hamas. Hamas need to be sort of called to account for their firing of rockets. It's absolutely terrifying. I have friends in southern Israel. I have friends in the Israeli Defense Forces as well who have actually been called up. I've lost contact with them over the last 48 hours, and I'm absolutely terrified for them. However, the civilian deaths in Gaza are completely unjustifiable. You can't sort of say that these are acceptable casualties. It's absolutely repulsive to say that. There are children who've been killed. Last night, an entire family, 2 generations, according to the BBC report that I read this morning, 2 generations of the same family were killed, wiped out. If the Israeli military are so sophisticated in the way that they can carry out strikes, then why is it that we are getting large numbers of civilian casualties yet again? And I'll just sort of give some information here in terms of according to
Gary, we need to move on, I'm afraid.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Eli Yishai, said that the goal of the operation is to send Gaza back to the Middle Ages. He said that yesterday.
No, he did not.
Media, you know? Paul,
give us your correction to that.
What he said, the Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, is that if, I repeat, if we are forced into a ground operation, then we need to go all the way. That's it. We can use emotional language as much as we want. The idea that any Israeli politician would say something like, send them back into the Dark Ages or whatever I don't know the exact wording of what the speaker said is simply false. I do agree with him.
You don't know the exact wording of what he says, but you're challenging the wording.
I said that the wording that he said is that if we are to be forced into a land operation, a ground operation, then the Israeli military needs to go all the way. I said that and I repeat that.
All right, thank you very much. That's the correction. Gary, thank you for your call today. We've got Tom and Roy as well. Tom first. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
What I would like to say is, first, could I greet Paul, say Boker Tov and Kol HaKavod L'Sahal. And I believe that Israel for too long has been bombarded by rockets. I personally was nearly killed in 1987 in a double suicide bomb in Jerusalem. I'm a strong supporter of Israel. I would gladly give up my British passport for an Israeli passport. Israel is not the aggressor. The land belongs to Israel. The land was promised to the Jewish people. And no matter how the world media portrays Israel, Israel will have their land, will have their inheritance. And what the BBC has been responsible for has been really, my eyes, has been disgusting. This week, there was a BBC report of a clip from so-called Gaza, an Israeli strike against Hamas terrorists, because that's what they are, they're terrorists. And four people lifting this man away, carrying him by the arms and by the legs. And then in the next clip, 1 minute into the clip, the same man's walking about as healthy as a cucumber. This is BBC reports, Sky News, CBN. All the news reports are doctored to try and portray Israel as the aggressor. I support Israel 100%, and there's many people in Northern Ireland who support Israel, especially amongst the Christian community.
Tom, stay with us.
Just let me finish.
I haven't finished with you. I'm going to give you a response, but I want to bring in Simon. And I want to bring in Simon. You can respond to him because
he's speaking. That's okay. That's fine.
All right. After he's finished, you can talk again. Don't worry. I'm not throwing you off. Come on in, Simon.
Hello, William. I've been following this story for years, going way back to the various assaults in Palestine. I think it's absolutely disgusting. It can't be justified in any way, shape, or form.
Palestine?
Well, in your opinion, Mister, in your opinion.
No, sir.
There's a youngster's photograph on Facebook at the minute, William. He belongs to a BBC reporter, 11-month-old wee baby boy. With his wee brace, and that youngster died at the hands of American paid missiles, and it's absolutely disgusting, is what it is.
That's one of our BBC film editors' children.
Yes. Is he a terrorist? Is he a Hamas terrorist? That young fella.
It's awful. It's awful. Yeah, and of course on Twitter as well. I mean, the images of this conflict are appalling. On Twitter yesterday, you may have seen an image that was being tweeted around the world of 4 children, all siblings in the same family, lying dead on. And of course, and we have to say, there are equally abhorrent and horrible images of Israeli soldiers as well, and Israeli citizens. The images of war generally are appalling, and we're seeing them now every single minute of the day.
You've got to look at the body count, William, to see who the aggressor is here. I mean, it doesn't take Einstein to figure that out. Look at the deaths on the Palestinian side. Look at the deaths on the Israeli side. Who's the aggressor? It doesn't take Einstein to figure that one out, And that's been going on this years, upon countless years.
Yes, and after the Libyan war, all the weapons going through North Africa into Hamas, the weapons from Iran coming through into Hezbollah in the north, Israel surrounded by millions and millions of Arabs who can't even look after these so-called Palestinian people. They can't even look after their own people.
It's not that long ago. Children's toys weren't allowed into Gaza because they were deemed an illegal kind of a weapon. Concrete's not allowed in. Metal's not allowed. They're not even allowed to build.
Gaza, you saw all the theme parks, all the play parks in Gaza. The
theme parks, like Disney World. Disney World's based in Gaza. I'm going to Disney World in Gaza.
Guys,
to go. Yep.
Let's not shout each other down. We're having a disagreement, obviously. Tom, you don't think there's any humanitarian crisis in Gaza at all?
No,
none at all.
And the Israel has provided more food into Gaza than anybody else.
Oh, they're great guys.
Ishmael, give us your response to that. I mean, Thomas...
let's remind ourselves what our Prime Minister David Cameron referred to Gaza as. He called it as a prison camp. The reason he said that is because of the strangulation of the Israelis around Gaza. We hope to end this war, and I think let's end on a positive note. The way to end this is Israel must end the siege of Gaza, stop the bombing, and let's bring both sides on the negotiation table, and let's pray that the negotiations that are taking place in Egypt at the moment bear some fruit and the loss of innocent life is stopped.
And do you think, Ishmael, there's a possibility that Hamas will make an agreement that they will not be encouraging or supporting any rocket attacks in the future?
Let's put this into perspective. They are prepared to stop any firing onto Israelis as soon as Israel stops the siege on Gaza and its occupation. There's no doubt about that.
Paul Hersham said they need more than that. They need a commitment that there will be no resumption of rocket attacks in the future.
There will be no resumption provided there is no siege on Gaza.